Hey there, my name is John Siskovich. I'm a farmer in Western Connecticut, and I am hanging out in the basement today in the studio to honestly just be a little cooler because it's humid and about to thunderstorm outside. I have your questions that you went to farmmarketingsolutions.com, went to the bottom of the page and asked me. Let's get into feed and my plans for this fall in today's video. Quite frankly, I'm freaking excited about it. So Karen wrote in, she said, how many times do you feed and how do you know they are eating enough to maximize their finished weight? And that is a good question. The biggest variable we have with our pastured poultry is what they're eating. You know, like the temperature goes up and down, they're outside. One of the biggest bought inputs, the things that we spend money on, is their feed. And that's one of the things that in general we know the least about, proper chicken nutrition. Now, Karen, I'll answer Karen's question first. And then I'm going to get into the experiment that I'm going to do this fall because I have 240 birds coming August 27th, and I'm doing some experiments with them, and then we'll just wrap it up. She's got a second question here that we'll answer about where I get my birds processed. Now, how often do I feed my birds? I full feed all the time. And what I do is that I'll feed them every morning. When they're in the brooder, I always have enough feeders that the birds never run out of food. If your birds run out of food, then when you put it down, even if you put down a bunch of feeders, that first feeder that you put down, all the birds are gonna bum rush that feeder, and then they can jump on top of each other, they can scratch each other. It's kind of a brutal atmosphere. Chickens, when they wanna eat, just like really get after it. And that's not so good. So when they're in the brooder, I have a ton of feeders and I top off all those feeders a couple times a day. So it's easy for the birds to get to it. They're growing, which is what their job is to do, and that they have full access to that feed. Now, when they're out in the field, I give them a full feed in the morning, and I don't do a 2-a-day feeding until I see that when I come back the next morning, that feeder is completely empty. When that feeder is completely empty, I know they're not getting enough feed, and that triggers me to start feeding them more. I'll feed them twice a day. I'll go out in the morning and I'll go out in the afternoon just to fill up their feeders again. And you'll see over time, less and less food is left over, and you'll need to feed a little bit more often, but my choice in general is to go with a full feed all the time because you want to maximize the growth that you're getting for raising them, because the more chicken you grow, the more money you're gonna make, ideally, when you sell that bird later on. Now, you're gonna get into variables, and this is that annoying part in the video where John says there's no easy solution and there's no silver bullet, and it all depends on the time of year and your area and the breed and the situation and all the things that go into being a good pasture poultry raiser, or grower. Some of those things are temperature. If it's cold outside, the birds are gonna metabolize more feed to stay warm. They're gonna grow more feathers, so they're gonna put on less body mass. And it's usually coincides with cooler weather means shorter days. For me in New England, longer days are usually hotter because it's in the middle of the summer, near the summer solstice, and the birds, we got two things there. We have a longer photo period, so that sunlight is coming through their skull and their skin and hitting their hypothalamus and triggering their pituitary gland to produce more body mass of chicken that I'm gonna sell and people are gonna eat later on. But they're also warm. So they don't have to generate heat to keep their bodies warmer. Broiler chickens, white Cornish cross broiler chickens, will look half naked in the summer because they don't have to grow as many feathers in order to stay warm and trap their body heat in because it's hot outside. So less feathers means more body weight. And you can grow birds out a little faster in the summer with a longer photo period and higher temperature than you can in the fall or the very, very early spring, where you have a shorter photo period and colder days where those birds are also gonna grow out more feathers. They'll also grow more small feathers, which makes them a little harder to pluck, so you have a little extra time on processing day to pluck the fully feathered birds versus the half naked birds. Again, variables, and I apologize, you'll have to take this information and adjust it to your area. Now, I do full feed all the time. If I notice that the birds are excessively overweight and I'm starting to get heart attacks, I'll draw back their feed a little bit. towards the middle to end to reduce how much mass they're putting on, to let their bodies kind of catch up, and that'll make them forage a little bit more and eat more of a diverse diet. If I see that they are slowing down, I'll get my feed tested, or I will change feeds, which is not always recommended because changing their diet up just upsets the birds. But get the feed tested to make sure that the feed company means what they put on the label, and also feeding extra so that there's always a bountiful amount of food so the birds will eat a little bit of extra. I've also noticed in the summer when it's super hot and I want the birds to eat, I'll spray them down with some cool water, not like a jet stream interrogation style, but like gentle mist cooling of water, so that the birds will go from sitting down and panting and being hot into being, oh, this is great, I'm cooled down now, I can eat again, and all the birds will go back and eat, and then you have a greater feed efficiency because the birds will eat more throughout the entire day. You can also change when you feed the birds, because if the peak heat of the day is at like 2 to 3 o'clock, their peak metabolic heat is 5 hours after they've eaten their last meal. So if you feed later in the day, the birds will eat that, and the heat of the day will be here, and their peak metabolic heat will be here right in the evening as it starts to cool down. Where if you feed 5 hours before 2 o'clock, you know, if you're like 9 o'clock or whatever, then their peak metabolic heat and the peak heat of the day will align, and they'll be the most stressed out, and that's when you really have to hose them down, because they're going to be so hot that they are panting, and they have all that motion. They need all that blood to be moving in order to pant, to cycle air, to cool down, which will make their heart beat faster, which will stress it out and give them a heart attack because they're too big and their organs didn't grow fast enough to keep up with the rest of their body, and their bodies are overstressed from trying to cool down from the hot day. Is this like a lot of information? I don't know, because it is a one-way stream here, me talking to a camera and you guys being on YouTube. But let me know in the comment section below if I talk too fast, or if it's boring, listen to me drone on in a monotone in front of a stupid board, because now I'm not on the field to be distracted by anything else. Whatever. I love sharing all this stuff because I've been through all these little things. So this fall, the projects that I'm working on, I'm raising this batch of birds. I'm doing my standard 240 birds, which fits my truck and trailer going to processing, and it fits 8 chicken tractors together in the field. I'm gonna break those up into 4 different groups. I'm gonna have my control that I do normally. I'm gonna do their normal feed. Then I'm gonna take their normal feed and put it on a 3-day fermentation cycle where I ferment their feed over a 3-day period and switch it out into buckets, and we'll get into this in the future. Then I'm gonna give one set of chicken tractors free choice fresh brewer's grain, because I have a brewery here and it's a free input for me, and it's usually not very nutritious stuff. It's more kind of empty fiber, really high in protein and nitrogen, and I'm curious to see just what they do over time compared to other chicken tractors. And then I've been doing some research where there was a group of scientists who had gotten a certain kind of yeast that breaks down the brewer's grain and ferments it and makes it more freely available and makes it like this slurry. I'm gonna start fermenting the brewer's grain as well to ferment that and as a feed source for birds, and see if I can offset or change my material, my input costs for feed by these feed experiments, and talk about feed a lot this fall. It is my key area of research. It's something that I haven't talked about as much on the channel because it is farm marketing solutions. It's supposed to be business slanted, but your feed is a big business cost for pasture poultry, for pigs, for animals in general, unless you're raising them 100% grass fed, which good for you. Yeah, we're just gonna do some experiments this fall and see what comes of it. I'm pretty excited for that. I get chicks at the end of August. The last question Karen had, and this is just for Karen now, so if you want to drop out of the video and just wait for tomorrow, this section is just for Karen. She said, you feed organic and pasture. Did you get certified organic? And if so, where do you process them? I'm in Connecticut. So Karen, if you're in Connecticut, stop by the tasting room on a Saturday, and I'm there doing a farm tour every day at 2 o'clock during the season. We're gonna have them going through into September this year. I feed certified organic feed and I raise my birds on pasture, but I myself am not certified organic, and I'm very careful about my language to not make the claim that I myself am certified. There's more paperwork and stuff and money that you have to pay to get certified. We are customer certified, that they can see my feed bags, they can see how I raise the birds. I'm willing to show them. We have open door policy. willing to show anybody anything and explain my process. And if they want to buy the product, great. If they don't, then that's on them. But because I'm not competing for shelf space on a store, and I sell all of my stuff retail, my certification process is my customers. I process my birds that I sell on farm at Buffoni's Poultry Farm in Johnston, Rhode Island. They are a certified USDA poultry slaughter facility. What the actual regulations are on having organic certified birds and going through the processor, I don't know off the top of my head. That would be a good question to be an APA member for, and put it up on the APA forum at apppa.org, the American Pasture Poultry Producers, because there are other people who are not only certified organic, but own their own processing facilities and would know all those answers to those questions if you need help in that regard. Tomorrow we're gonna go to Barack. Barack's got a question about all of his birds, all of his baby chicks were dead on arrival. What do you do when that happens, when you have planned rotations and promises to customers? And that is the discussion for tomorrow's video. Thanks for taking the time to watch this, me on YouTube in front of a door. Until next time, I will see you out in the field.